We turn now to a strategy by Republican governors making a point on immigration, transporting migrants north from their border states. The two most recent events both involve Venezuelans, one group ending up in Washington, D.C., not far from Vice President Kamala Harris's home, and another being sent to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, arriving by plane and bus from Texas. Let's go now to Newsy congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed, who's been watching this story. Nate, what is the tactic here?
Well, Julie, Washington Democrats have been calling this a cruel political stunt by some of those red state governors that are on the border, sending many of these migrants up to northern bluer states. Additionally, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said today that the migrants who were flown to Martha's Vineyard weren't necessarily, she alleged that they weren't told what their situation would be on the ground and were lied to about the status of the support that they would receive. This is a tactic that Republican governors have said is trying to give blue states a message.
We are not a sanctuary state.
Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis taking part in the latest tactic Republican governors have employed to push back on what they view as President Biden and congressional Democrats' inaction on the migrant crisis, sending 2 charter planes Wednesday carrying migrants to Martha's Vineyard, a popular vacation spot off the coast of Massachusetts.
The minute even a small fraction of what those border towns deal with every day is brought to their front door, they all of a sudden go berserk, and they're so upset that this is happening.
The planes, which were carrying roughly 50 migrants, including children, arrived around 3 p.m. with no warning, according to local officials.
There was no heads up to the local community at all, and so these people had to walk several miles just to get to a place, Martha's Vineyard Community Services, to alert them that they needed help.
Earlier this summer, Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona and Governor Greg Abbott of Texas began sending buses full of migrants apprehended at the southern border to Washington, D.C., often with no warning.
In any one sector in the state of Texas, we have more than 5,000 people come across that sector every single day.
On Thursday, 2 buses carrying migrants also arrived at the U.S. Naval Observatory, the vice president's official residence in Washington, D.C. Those buses came from Del Rio, Texas. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser declared a public health emergency last week in order to redirect more resources to support the thousands of migrants who've arrived in the nation's capital from Texas and Arizona.
Guys, move to the side.
And just last month, Texas Governor Abbott began sending migrants to New York and Chicago as well. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued a disaster proclamation that has tapped the state's National Guard to help handle the hundreds of migrants being sent from Texas.
Let me be clear. While other states may be treating these vulnerable families as pawns, here in Illinois, we are treating them as people. And when a person comes urgently seeking help, here in Illinois, we offer them a helping hand.
Nearly a dozen busloads have arrived in recent weeks in Chicago, with some migrants being relocated by the state to hotels in the suburbs, angering local mayors. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has called on the Biden administration to provide more federal assistance in light of Texas's action.
Governor Abbott's racist and xenophobic practices of expulsion have only amplified the challenges many of these migrants have experienced on their journey to find a safe place.
And even though it's been requested, the White House has not provided additional support or funding to many of these cities and states, these blue cities and states that have requested it due to the influx of migrants coming from those border states, which have sent them on buses and sometimes, of course, by planes. The Department of Defense also refusing a request from the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, to activate the D.C. National Guard. That's a peculiarity of how D.C. government works. They were not willing to activate the National Guard here to deal with some of the influx of the migrants they've been receiving at Union Station just across from us here at the U.S. Capitol for several months.